This week on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast, I'm talking about navigating the storm, strategies for weathering a stock market downturn. Today, I'm talking about the coming recession. Dun, dun, dun. Now, the reality to always keep in mind is that there will be a recession. I'm stating the obvious here, yet we walk around pretending that everything is fine, and everything is fine until it's not. And then in retrospect, we look at it and we say, oh yeah, we should have seen that coming. But we just want to happily go about our day pretending that everything is fine when it's not. And so it's important to remember that about every 7 to 10 years, a recession hits the economy. And the trickle-down effect is that the stock market usually takes a dive anywhere from 15 to 20% in a more mild recession to 50% in the worst of the worst, like what we went through in 2008 with the global financial crisis. So it's a matter of when, not if, for the next recession. And so we have to plan for the reality that your investment portfolio could drop maybe 15, 20, 25, even 30%, depending on how you're invested. And I would say, a 15% drop is pretty reasonable, even if you're conservative, even if you're well diversified, even if you have a decent amount in cash and bonds. Unless you are like totally hide it under the mattress, you have everything in CDs at the bank or buried in your backyard, you are going to have a meaningful decline. Hopefully not more than maybe 15% or so. But I would say for a lot of retirees who have taken the time to ensure that they don't have too much in stocks and too much risk, still having a 15% decline is what I would say is a pretty reasonable expectation. So you have to ask yourself then, can your portfolio weather a 12 to 18 month downturn? So if you put real numbers to this and you're well diversified, you don't have too much in stocks, you sidestep a lot of the downturn and maybe you only lose 15%. Okay. If you have $1 million at the onset of this downturn, you lose 15%. That's $150,000. Now you're down to $850,000. If you lose 20% or 25% and you run the numbers on that, your million turns into $750,000. Okay. It takes a big hit, even if you don't have the worst of the worst losses. And it can take 2 to 3 years sometimes to claw that back as things recover after things bottom out. So a lot of people, you kind of go through that mental exercise, and that's a lot. That's a lot to handle. So with the title of today's episode being the coming recession, I say that not because I can predict the future, because I can't, but I say that because the recession is coming. Could be this year, probably not, maybe next year, who knows? I've been pessimistic about the direction of the economy since COVID, and there are just too many pockets of the economy that are not doing well. They haven't been doing well for a long time. The consumer, generally, the average American, is not very healthy right now. We have a lot of debt. There's signs that employment is getting worse, that too many Americans have too much debt, and there's a lot of risk in the system right now from all of that. But my opinion doesn't matter that much, because whether I'm right about a recession being around the corner or not doesn't matter. A recession is coming, and when it does, it's important to prepare for it, both mentally and psychologically. So we want to take some specific steps. I mentioned this yesterday. Get your portfolio in line with where it needs to be now. If you have too much in stocks and not enough in cash and bonds, then take advantage of the fact that the market is still at its all-time high and near that point. So the other thing too with this is I want to be clear in saying that even though I'm pessimistic, it doesn't change the long-term view. So we have to be optimistic over the long term, and it's okay to be pessimistic in the short term. And so we want to ask ourselves, what steps would you be willing to take if a recession hits this year or next year? You want to ask yourself that every single year. If you're planning to retire next year or later this year, would you be willing to delay retirement? Would you be willing to work part-time if maybe you already are retired? Would you be willing to go back to work even just for a couple of years so you can sidestep and give your portfolio a chance to recover before you start dipping into that and taking withdrawals? Could you cut back on your spending? Do you have the ability to cut your withdrawal rate to nothing or to a very low level from your investments to give your portfolio a better chance at recovering fully from especially a major downturn. Do you have enough in savings? If you're still working, like if you got laid off, could you handle that without dipping into your retirement early? Could you stop portfolio withdrawals for 6 to 12 months if the market takes a significant dive? Would you be willing to say no to that big trip in Europe you were planning? Like, what's your plan B if you retire right at the onset of a recession, or you're planning to retire soon and a recession cuts your nest egg down by 10, 15, 20% or more? So we want to prepare for the inevitable and the coming recession. It's like building your house on a rock. We don't want to build the house on sand. And that's what will keep that house standing, building it on the rock, protecting your nest egg and lifestyle, and not having to move in with your kids when you're 80 because you ran out of money because of a bad timing issue early in retirement with a major recession. So there are steps you can take today, and we want to take those steps today so that you're not caught off guard when the inevitable recession, when the coming recession finally does happen. All right, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.